morning, everybody. Welcome in. It's the Week 7 edition of Fantasy Sports Markets Fantasy Football Sunday. My buddy Justin Fensterman is with me. I am Ben Heisler. We are with you for the next hour, taking all of your lineup questions, going over everything you need to get ready for the fantasy day for you. Fensty, it's good to have you back, brother. How are you?
I'm doing well, Benny Heisen. It's great to be back, and especially when you have those Tampa Bay Buccaneers on bye. These are good bye teams to have this week, because how hard has it been to figure out the Browns outside of Nick Chubb? How hard is it to figure out that big Thunder Mountain roller coaster ride that Jameis Winston brings every week? We don't have to deal with that. You might as well call it summer vacation, even though it's fall.
Yes, I'll take the summer vacation for as long as it'll have me, right? Like I'll roll with it for as long as humanly possible. We got a punch going on for you. We'll break down all the different matchups. We answer all of your lineup questions right here on this very show. But where we have to start today is there's a bunch of injury news just continuing to pile up. A lot of headlines starting to make their case. And again, you can send us your questions right here. We are on Facebook Live. We are on Twitter. We are on YouTube Live. However you want to reach us, we are here for you today. And Fensty, there's some news coming out from Chicago. Mitch Trubisky officially cleared for Week 7. He's good to go today. No Alvin Kamara and no Drew Brees, obviously, so that's going to be an intriguing matchup for the Bears. We are also seeing some news coming in on the Dallas side as well that you've been updating.
Absolutely. Now, if you look back to Friday and you wonder about the beat reporters, how active they are and how accurate they are when it comes to actually covering this team. And I have to give a little bit of credit to the Dallas side here, because they said there's a chance that guys like Randall Cobb and Amari Cooper could play. Now seeing further reports that both are expected to play right now.
How do you envision that matchup going? Because I know it's a Sunday and a lot of people have questions about, the main slate of games, but I think having Amari Cooper back is so substantial for the Cowboys. Also consider that Michael Gallup's numbers for Dallas go way up when Cooper's on the field as well, and Dak Prescott's numbers whenever he's there make a substantial difference. Right now, I think that coming in, Dallas was 3-point favorites. It might have gone down a little bit. I'll have to check the latest from Vegas, but having Cooper back, I think that gives a sizable advantage back over on the Dallas side, and I think that 3-point favorite line is probably where it should be.
Yes, absolutely. And let's not forget about the Eagles as well. One of the worst secondaries in the NFL this season thus far, giving up over 280 passing yards per game. So to get some of those receiving weapons back for Dallas, that is so key right there. And now when you're looking at your quarterbacks, you now have to give a little bit of a look at Dak Prescott.
I think so. Yeah, considering how bad Philadelphia has been against the pass all season long. Like, this isn't anything that we need to be that is new news to us. We've seen the struggles. We saw Kirk Cousins carve them up. Kirk Cousins, the same Kirk Cousins that had done nothing up until Week 5 of the NFL season, just completely rickrolled all over them. So as far as that matchup goes, there's a lot to dive into today. I see questions coming in from Seth. I see a couple coming in from, I think there's one from Bobby as well. So we'll get to all of you guys. But Fancy, when you're looking at this slate overall for Week 7, I think especially on the daily side, and especially like on a site like Fantasy Sports Markets, normally we're used to just locking in Christian McCaffrey. Normally we're used to locking in either Mike Evans or Chris Godwin on a site like FSM. But today, I think at the running back spot, there's one cash game option I think everyone's going to have, and then I think it really starts to get diverse. When you're looking at the slate for running backs today, who are some of the guys that you immediately start to gravitate to?
I mean, can Leonard Fournette have a better matchup, Ben Heisler?
The answer is no, he can't.
This is a guy on FSM you must have in your lineups. This is your Christian McCaffrey today.
Yes.
You mentioned CMC and how reliable he's been, especially on fantasysportsmarkets.com, on our site, where you don't have to worry about any kind of salary cap implications at all with that. That's going to be Leonard Fournette today. Feel very safe with him. And you make a great point, Ben. Running back's not going to be the easiest, but that's where it's starting for me. Also, somebody else that I like, Ben, in another good matchup, Josh Jacobs. Talk about I learned a lot a few weeks ago, Ben, from that Eagles-Packers game. It was a Thursday night game, and it was one of my most successful showdowns that I played this year. Why? Because you can attack the Packers on the ground game. Josh Jacobs coming off the bye. Very beautiful matchup there.
Yeah, I love the call for Josh Jacobs as well. Curious to see what ends up happening. I actually took the Raiders. I'm betting the Raiders today. I got them at +5.5. And I think the way that they've played on the road especially has been pretty impressive. They hung with the Bears, certainly in London, ended up beating them down the stretch, had that big win on the road against Indianapolis, who's had a couple big wins this year. John Gruden slowly has the Raiders playing tough, really physical, and especially with Green Bay and all of their injuries today. I really like that matchup for Josh Jacobs, and you talked about their advantage in being able to run on them. Certainly Jacobs presents an ideal matchup today as well. I'm going to give you a name that my buddy Derek Brown and I were talking about, and I talked about it on your show yesterday on Wake Up Fantasy Sports on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio. Jacksonville and Cincinnati, that's kind of that sneaky game this week that I don't think a lot of people are going to be on, especially on a site like Fantasy Sports Markets. But the matchup sets up so well, really, for both teams. On the Jacksonville side, no one's going to want to play Gardner Minshew and DJ Chark, considering that they got let down in a tough spot against New Orleans. But now they go up against Cincinnati, who are missing their starting corners, who have had no ability to stop the run. So I think Minshew is in play. I think Fournette certainly in play. And DJ Chark and both the quarterback and the wide receiver can give you a little bit of leverage on the field because everyone's going to be playing Fournette. You have somebody else in the mix as well. And then conversely, Jacksonville, Fancy, the last 3 weeks cannot stop the run. If there has ever been an opportunity this year for Joe Mixon to get right, today is the day to do it.
He just needs a little bit more protection out of that O-line so he can find those holes, Ben. That's the big thing with Joe Mixon, and that's something that Cincy hasn't really given him. Let me ask you this about Chark, though, because Chark is no secret anymore. He's been one of the darlings in fantasy all season. Ben, if I tell you that D.D. Westbrook is going to play, does that make you hesitate a bit with Chark and maybe want to pivot to Westbrook?
No, not at all. Because it doesn't really matter who's going to be on the other side for Cincinnati. They're not stopping them. Again, both of the starting corners are out. With Westbrook, yeah, he's gotten a similar target share, but when they've both been on the field, Chark has been the one getting into the end zone. He's still gotten a decent amount of the air yards in this offense as well. So I'm not moving away from Chark in tournaments today. He's one of my favorite tournament plays of the day. So many questions already coming in. Great to have you guys always with us. Let us start with our buddy Seth. He says he's got a couple of questions. They're half-point PPR. So let's start with the running back spot. We have to pick two out of this list between Miles Sanders. Sanders is in the Sunday night game against the Cowboys. David Montgomery, who is at home against the Saints. Terry McLaurin, who is at home against San Francisco, or Devin Singletary. So we got Miles Sanders, David Montgomery, Terry McLaurin, and Devin Singletary. So, with Montgomery, I'm probably ruling him out just because the Saints front seven has been very impressive. I know the Bears are coming off a bye, and they've made more of a commitment, Fency, to get the ground game going. And I think they're going to, because they returned all 5 starters from their offensive line a season ago. Kyle Long just went on IR, but I think that's actually a good thing because he had not been playing well. He was clearly hurt. So I do think they're going to get their run game fixed. I just don't think it's going to be this week. So would you probably agree that we probably rule out David Montgomery here?
I'm still, when it comes to daily in spectator mode, when it comes to David Montgomery. Okay. Just don't have that kind of confidence to really plug him in, especially on fantasysportsmarkets.com just yet. Yeah. So that's someone, I'll tell you who my lean is right now, Ben, and you can tell me if you agree or disagree.
Okay.
I feel like the seesaw of the Eagles' run game is starting to shift in favor of Miles Sanders just a little bit. You see him a little bit more active in the passing game. He's just getting it. And when you get reps at the professional level, you can start to see if you're watching these games, and the importance of watching tape is crucial with daily or seasonal fantasy. Watch the players play, see them for yourselves, and I'm seeing slow improvements overall from Miles Sanders. So I think that overall, going into the next number of weeks, the Eagles are going to put a little bit more work into Miles Sanders. So right now, that's where I'm standing, although Devin Singletary is like that thorn bush, that thorn that's just poking you right there. It's a very juicy matchup versus Miami. I know Frank Gore is still there, and I was listening to shows like even Fantasy Alarm and Fantasy Footballers on SiriusXM. Both shows are definitely in on a guy like Singletary. There could be more than one back. I am sticking, though, with Miles Sanders, again, being more active in that passing game. Going to get a few more touches, I'm predicting as well. That's where I'm going, Ben.
Yeah, he's had 8 targets in the last 2 games, about over 140 yards and a touchdown through the air. So, yeah, I like the call for Miles Sanders as well. So you're going to go – we need to pick 2 of them, though. So is it going to be –
I thought it was just one. That's
so you're going to go with Sanders and Singletary here?
And who are the other options one more time?
Miles Sanders, David Montgomery, who it sounds like we've ruled out, Terry McLaurin, and Devin Singletary.
Yeah, let's do that.
In a half-point PPR.
Again, weather impact. I don't care about it too much overall. But this weather here, and I showed it during the preview video. So again, make sure that you watch that, and maybe I could give you one more show one more time what it's like in the DC area. Boom. It is disgusting out there. I'm in Maryland, and this is just absolutely gross, Ben. And when it comes to gross games, I stay away from the disgustingness.
I think that's perfectly reasonable. I'll agree with you here. Normally, I would have gone with McLaren even against San Francisco just because he's been dominant. He's been matchup proof. And Case Keenum has been targeting him. But
Cooper Kupp was dominant as well. And what happened to him? What happened to that Rams offense? You're going to call that a fluke? This San Francisco team is serious. They're here to play. We saw them beat the snot out of the Browns when it comes to protecting, and against Odell Beckham Jr. We saw them against the Rams. The Rams, Ben. Cooper Kupp, the target machine, was held to 3 receptions against this team. How do you trust any of these Redskins players?
I don't know if you necessarily trust them, but I think about volume and opportunity and target share. You're right. I mean, like Cooper Kupp, right among the top of the list, has been there all season long. But I figured with game script, likely playing from behind at some point, they might have a little bit of soft coverage against McLaren. But again, the weather is a factor. Singletary is really intriguing today. I think the field, and by the way, I see questions coming in from Jack and from Sam and from Kexi, from Mimsy, from PD Dubs, and from Sean, Casey Royalty, Corey out in Winnipeg, CJ. We will get to all of your guys' questions. So many coming in on the early side. So thank you guys for all being with us. We will continue to answer all of your questions right here on Fantasy Football Sunday. Also, if you've not played on Fantasy Sports Markets before, what are you guys waiting for? It's daily fantasy with no salary caps. If you look at the bottom of the screen, there is a promo code FF Sunday that is $5 free. Plus, if you guys want to get an extra $100 to add to your Fantasy Sports Markets account, remember, Fensty, we're friends. You can refer a friend, and there's a right when you go to fantasysportsmarkets.com. You click the link, send them your link, and they get credited $5 as well as you get credited $5 as well.
I'm so jealous, Ben, because you're the only friend I have. People don't like being friends with me for some reason. So for all of you that have hundreds of friends out there, what are you waiting for?
Right. I found it a little weird that I was your one Facebook friend.
That's right.
And the one person that you were following on Instagram. You know what? People are like not using Facebook as much anymore, and I feel like we're like part of the older generation now that still like will check in and post pictures of our family and stuff like that.
Hey Ben, you guys got MySpace? That's my question.
Dude, that was also one of my favorite lines from Superbad. So you guys have MySpace or? So, Seth, hopefully that answers your question. We're going to go with Miles Sanders and Devin Singletary. I still worry about Frank Gore eating into some of that workload as well as some of the goal line, but they're all sort of in that same category for me. Last PPR toss-up from Seth. He wants to know if you go with Tyler Lockett. Seattle is at home against Baltimore today, or Michael Gallup. Gallup is a little bit more intriguing now considering Amari Cooper is back in the mix and how bad Philadelphia's secondary has been. This is going to be a high-scoring affair, I think, today in Seattle. Both of the two quarterbacks are the number 1 and number 2 scoring quarterbacks in fantasy this year with Russell Wilson and Lamar Jackson. So where are you going on this one?
Man, I still feel a little bit better about Tyler Lockett, a little bit safer. Ben, I view when players are going to be active, but especially when you have 2 receivers that have been questionable, now they're going to be in. I just worry about those targets being spread out just a little bit. It's one thing when it's one guy, but when it's 2 guys, because Randall Cobb could play as well, that could change. We all know about injury reports. That actually turns me off to Gallup a little bit, despite the fact that I've been all over, hey, let's attack the Eagles. Personally, right. I'm going Lockett. I feel a little bit safer there.
It's definitely the safer play. Gallup, though, when healthy, and especially in this matchup, is the higher upside play. So I think that's where you can make your decision. I'm with you, though. I prefer the matchup for Lockett, although he has to deal with Marlon Humphrey today, Feinstein, and that is a very difficult matchup. So it's closer than I think a lot of people would initially anticipate, but I do think he's still a slightly safer play.
Yep. No, I'm with you there. And again, it depends on how you play and how you view it. Ben, you brought up a good point when it comes to Michael Gallup as well. Now that other receivers will be back, the other side of that is now less focus will be on Gallup naturally. But when it comes to what we've seen from this Seattle team, they're going to be forced to throw, and you can attack Baltimore, as we've proven their secondary as well, not as great. Then you know what? When it comes to attacking Baltimore, how can't you put Tyler Lockett in? Lock him in there.
I used to buy Adderall from a guy named Les Focus.
Really?
No.
I was like, Ben, why are you saying this on air right now?
No. It's. I'm a dad. Dad puns. It's 9:47 in the morning. I'm
Hey,
not
hey,
sleeping.
Dad bod t-shirts right there. You can win
Yeah.
those as well when you play on FSM. You want to
Salute
be
to
part
our
of the Cobra
friends.
Kai? Strike first, strike hard, no mercy, Ben.
I love our friends over at DadBots. There's still a few spots left, by the way, in that free contest over at FantasySportsMarkets.com. Even if you missed out on the Thursday slate, it goes all the way through Monday. FantasySportsMarkets.com. Click on the free DadBot tees contest, and you will be set to go. The top 3 winners get a T-shirt of their choice from our good buddies over at DadBot tees. Jack checks in over on YouTube Live. He wants to know whether or not you go with James White in the Monday night game against the Jets or Kerryon Johnson for his flex spot today. So when it comes to James White, Fensty is always going to be the safest play out there. You always know what his floor is going to be, and you always know that the volume is going to be there, even when New England continues to rotate as many running backs as they have been rotating in over the course of the season. However, Kerryon Johnson, it's a difficult matchup. Minnesota's front seven is legit. But they are at home, and we're starting to see his volume start to climb up a little bit. And I also like his touchdown equity compared to James White. So where do you go in this matchup? I think this one's awfully close.
Yes, it is. And as much as I want to go James White here, Kerryon Johnson, I'm still going to be sticking with him. Again, just the volume, I expect it to still be there. Now, how much success will he have, we'll have to see. But again, I go the safety net, especially not only James White being the Monday night game, but also we have to talk about this a little bit. We got some major health concerns with New England right now. Multiple players that, if in, that'll take away from the James White targets. If out, though, then it'll be all him alone. We won't know that necessarily, Ben, till Monday night. Let's talk about it. Josh Gordon, he's out for this game. Julian Edelman is questionable. That's the big one right there. I mean, you've got Lacoste out as well for this team. Philip Dorsett also questionable. So that kind of scares me a little bit when it comes to these Patriots players, Ben.
I will say this, though. The answer, if it's PPR, to me, is James White. Because James White has seen, 28 targets in the last 3 games. He has a total of 8 plus 14, so he's got 23 catches. So he's been reliable and consistent in the passing game. Not really getting much rushing volume, especially with Sony Michel starting to come back a little bit. If it's PPR, Jack, I would go with James White. If it's half PPR or standard, I think Kerryon Johnson is the better play.
Right. And the other thing is, I mean, his target's a little inconsistent as well, Kerryon. You know, that does scare me a little bit, but this is why you drafted this guy. So again, they're going to feed him a little bit more. So that's why I'm hoping with Kerryon that he could get 18 to 20 touches today.
On Periscope, Kexi, your question is coming up next, but let's go back to YouTube Live and check out a question from Sam C. Half-point PPR, we have to choose today between Carlos Hyde, who is on the road against Indianapolis, Calvin Ridley at home against the Rams, and another guy that we just spoke of, James White, half-point PPR. To me, this is a no-brainer. Half-point PPR, I'm going Calvin Ridley. It's such an ideal matchup. It's the highest projected scoring game of the day. I don't have much exposure to Julio Jones today, and I know that it's a great matchup. He's at home against the Rams. Calvin Ridley is leading the Falcons in air yards. He's getting back into the end zone. I love Calvin Ridley today. I'm playing Calvin Ridley in cash today.
Now let me ask you this, Ben. Jalen Ramsey expected to play today. Does that make you worry a bit about Julio and Devonta Freeman at all when it comes to DFS?
Only a little bit, and we were talking about the impact that Jalen Ramsey has had on the running game and how the explosive run rate goes up substantially when he is off the field, but not in this matchup. This feels like both these teams are just going to be going right back and forth down the field. Right now Atlanta can't rush the passer, so Goff is going to have time to throw. Now, I do think it makes me a little bit more nervous to play Matt Ryan, just because I do think, Aaron Donald could get himself going today. I see, here are the outcomes for today. It's back and forth. Both teams completely shoot out. They're chasing after points. Matt Ryan has gone over 300 yards in every game this year. Or the Rams just beat the hell out of the Falcons. Right? I don't see a situation in which the Falcons all of a sudden continue to slow down the Rams, even though the Rams have been beating themselves, right?
Right. I feel a lot better as well if Todd Gurley, especially with the Rams, I mean, Jared Goff is going to be my quarterback in a lot of daily contests today. I'll tell you this, though. I wish Todd Gurley was out. I just wish, because then I'm worried that, because you just mentioned that if the Rams beat the snot out of the Falcons, then they're going to just start clock control and running the ball with Gurley. And I would have liked it a lot better if Gurley was still out or even questionable there.
Yeah, it would
Maybe
have
they
been
limit his
rockets up for
touches.
Darrell Henderson.
Absolutely. But now, again, I'm still locking in Goff and one of the three Rams receivers, Ben. I mean, you have to here. But from the Falcons side of it, yes, I'm fine with Ridley. But when it comes to Ryan and Julio, I've been riding them hard at the same time. I'm probably going to be staying away a little bit more when it comes to daily.
Perfectly reasonable. Although I just want to have some exposure to this game, and you can do it with Austin Hooper, you can do it with Julio if you want, but I just love the matchup for Ridley, especially because I don't think he's going to be trailed by Jalen Ramsey, and they just had to keep Talib go down. They traded away Marcus Peters. I feel like the matchup sets up exceptionally well for Calvin Ridley today. You brought up the Rams receivers. So let's get to this really quickly. And again, we see all your questions. If you guys have submitted a question here on YouTube Live or on Periscope, we will get to each and every one of them today. When it comes to the Rams receivers, to the way that I'm approaching it today, Fensty, is Cooper Kupp is a cash game lock. In tournaments, I prefer Brandon Cooks to Robert Woods, but I think you can make an argument that you could do a Jared Goff lineup with both Robert Woods and Brandon Cooks today.
Yes, and especially on FSM. That's the fun ability that you can play with. You don't have to worry about certain things on other sites. You do, taking price points into consideration. But this is the ideal place to stack. Why? You attack two teams. You attack Atlanta and you attack Houston. And that is what I'm going to be doing for the foreseeable future. Getting a lot more success on FSM from attacking Atlanta. Fully confident there. I don't mind putting 3 Rams in there, Ben.
By the way, too, if you're talking about attacking Houston, the guy that's going to be one of the most chalk options on the salary sites that may be a value for you on FSM today is T.Y. Hilton.
Absolutely. I mean, target monster, good against, and I got to give credit to my friend Phil Backert as well. Once again, told me Phil's very smart. Again, another guy watching the tape. You can hear him all over SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio. What Phil said to me, T.Y. Hilton always kills Houston. And it's an ideal matchup because everyone scores a lot versus Houston. So it just makes total sense. Let me ask you this, though, Ben. On FSM, and this might be going a little too deep, maybe too risky, Jacoby Brissett today. Do you have any faith in him as a difference maker rather than going with a guy like Goff that everybody's going to be going with?
I wouldn't play Brissett in cash. I would certainly consider him in tournaments. Yeah, I look at Jacoby as sort of in that Gardner Minshew role. Daniel Jones is sort of in that mix. Dak, if you're playing the Sunday night slate over at FSM. I think Brissett could be absolutely fine. And again, if you love T.Y. Hilton today, there's no reason that you shouldn't love Brissett as well.
Right. Marlon Mack is healthy as well, so he'll be a little bit active.
And that's another under the radar play that I really like today. Because I think the Colts win. I think they control time of possession against Houston. And again, when the Colts win and they dominate the line, it's because Marlon Mack's had a big game.
Right. And I'll say this, 46.5 right there on this game. The last time I checked the line here in the last hour, I like that. I kind of like the over on that game.
I think that's perfectly reasonable. Again, it has the ability to go back and forth, but again, it all depends on how both of these teams want to set up. If they're going to be doing a lot of running and burning down clock, that could impact you too.
Right.
So that's something to consider. All right, Kexi over on Periscope checks in. I have Breeze coming back soon and thought about selling Dak while he's at his highest. Bad idea. Well, if you're going to sell on Dak, now's not the time to do it. You got to wait until he has a game like tonight going up against Philly. You know what's crazy is the first 3 weeks of the season, Dak Prescott was on fire. Everybody wanted him. The last 3 weeks he's been bad. And people are down on him. Now's the time to buy on Dak Prescott,
right,
as opposed to sell on him, because he's still the number 6 scoring fantasy quarterback in the league, and he's been terrible the last 3 weeks. So if you're going to try and sell Dak, don't do it now because you're not going to get maximum value back for him. Do it after he has a monster day, and then if you want to move on from him, that's perfectly reasonable. You can always find a better value if you're trying to trade away quarterbacks at the right time.
And you can always stream as well. People forget. I mean, looking on waiver wires right now, I'm streaming in a league, and I saw guys like Kirk Cousins out there. Maybe not Phillip Rivers right now. It's been a little bit of a struggle for him, but hey, he's still out there. Gardner Minshew's out there. Brissett is out there. There are guys out there. Mm-hmm. So when you have that kind of situation, that the writer has in this case, the player has in this case, then yes, you're trading from a position of strength. Because let's say you trade Dak anyway, and I agree with you, Ben, wait till after this awesome game that he has set up for him here, then value me even higher. Always trade from a position of strength. And when it comes to trading quarterbacks, try to get that running back, get a number 2 running back and wide receiver if you can at this point.
Yeah, no question about it. All right, Mimsy's checking in on YouTube Live, wants to know whether or not you go with Latavius Murray, who's in for Alvin Kamara today for the New Orleans Saints on the road against the Bears, or Josh Jacobs on the road against Green Bay in a full-point PPR. They're so close to me. But I would go Josh Jacobs. I think, again, the matchup presents a little bit better. They're easier to run on Green Bay than it is to run on Chicago. A lot of people are going to gravitate to Murray on the salary sites because he's fairly cheap, and he's also going to get a ton of opportunity today. He'll probably get more touches, more catches maybe perhaps than Josh Jacobs. But from the matchup perspective, it's much easier to run on Green Bay than it is on Chicago. And Chicago just lost Akeem Hicks, so that does make a substantial difference. But I prefer Jacobs today.
I do too. Again, better matchup. And again, Chicago's been very stingy when it comes to their run defense. And I'm looking at the stats right now, and they are top 5 team when it comes to defending against the rushing yards and everything like that, defending against the run. When it comes to how many rushing yards per game, they give up 83 per game. That's nothing to joke about right there. So for me, it's a little bit of an easier situation here with Josh Jacobs because, again, running all over Green Bay. It's so easy. Jordan Howard did it.
The other thing, too, that I didn't realize about the Bears is that they're actually giving up, and this is from Al Zeidenfeld on his podcast, the Bears are actually 4th highest in the NFL in giving up yardage in the pass game to running backs. So if it was Alvin Kamara playing, I would say fire him up. Like, this presents like a very ideal situation for him. But in the other situation, Latavius Murray hasn't gotten much passes all year, so I don't think that's necessarily going to change. I don't think all of a sudden he's going to get 7-8 targets in the passing game today.
Right, no, and absolutely. And the Saints are going to have to figure something out because I'm also seeing reports that this may not be the only matchup that we don't have Alvin Kamara for moving forward. Ben, I've suffered a lot of ankle injuries in my career, which is life essentially like that.
Yes.
So we
don't want that.
High ankle sprains, there is no timetable. There's nothing you can do. You can try to do those stretches and everything with the rubber bands and everything tied around your ankle and do it. But Ben,
it's tough out here in these parts.
Right. It's literally high ankle sprains. There is no timetable. They take a long time to heal as opposed to normal low ankle sprains. I can tell you that from experience, dude.
Yeah. Well, so, I was presented with an interesting situation in one season-long league where somebody released David Montgomery, and I had Chase Edmonds and Latavius Murray sitting on the bench. And because of the high ankle sprain for Kamara and because David Johnson was set to play, I ended up releasing Chase Edmonds, even though he's been good in limited action. And if David Johnson does go down, Chase Edmonds could be an absolute stud. Like, I am praying for David Johnson to stay 100% healthy in today's game so I could pick up Montgomery and not feel like I just let go of a possible back that could win me a championship.
Right, and that's the risk you take with David Johnson as well. That whole situation's crazy. I mean, playing with an injured back a few weeks ago, I can't get over that. Why this guy was playing with an injured back, it just doesn't make any sense to me. So there's a little bit of fishiness going on when it comes to the Cardinals and how they're handling their injured players.
Without question. Questions coming in. We see one we're going to get to. Let's see. PD Dubs coming up next. I see him from Sean, from KC Royalty, from Corey, from CJ, Jeffrey, Dropping Science, and Paul. So all of you guys, we're going to get to your lineup questions here. It's the top of the hour. We got 30 minutes left on Fantasy Football Sunday. He's Fensty. I'm Ben. You can join us every Sunday at 9:30 a.m. Central Time, 10:30 a.m. East Coast Time. We are with you for a full hour answering all of your lineup questions and getting you ready for that week in DFS, especially over at FantasySportsMarkets.com. If you've never played before, it is non-salary cap DFS. There's a free code on the bottom of your screen to go ahead and check it out. And Fensty, I know that you're a great NFL guy, but especially with NBA starting up on Tuesday, there's never been a better time to get yourself started. And you've been preparing everybody for NBA, especially over at FantasyAlarm.com.
Absolutely, Ben. And, again, what you get at Fantasy Alarm, if you have your fantasy NBA drafts in the next 2 days, we have a cheat sheet that will help you win that ring. And that's what it's all about when it comes to doing any kind of fantasy content. I don't hide anything in daily as well. I will give you plays as well throughout the season because when you win, I win. And that's the truth. And that's how I feel. Being committed to this industry, there is all transparency, Ben. So very excited to get to play some DFS on fantasy sports markets. Excited and ready to dominate.
I got James Harden at number 6 overall. You like the pick?
I do like that, and I get it, with Russell Westbrook being there. I mean, who else is there in Houston besides Eric Gordon and Clint Capella? I'll give you that answer. Really nobody. So when it comes to however you're hearing with the reports, they're going to stagger their minutes. They're going to be in most of the game. James Harden, Ben, is still the number one option in my mind, despite the fact that Russell Westbrook is going to be bringing up the ball.
Hopefully we'll have some more time with Fensty a little bit later on this week. We'll try and get him on the FSM podcast to preview the start of the NBA season. Of course, his work is second to none over at Fantasy Alarm and over at SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio. We got a question from our buddy PD Dubs. Does he go with Dak Prescott or Josh Allen today? We talked about Prescott's matchup at home against the Eagles. They have struggled against the pass all year, but Josh Allen gets a team that isn't trying to win. Going up at home, 17-point favorites against Miami. Clearly the high floor player in Josh Allen is going to be the safer play today, but is it worth the risk with Prescott in this matchup?
I'd say it, Ben, once again, this is the perfect matchup for Dak Prescott here. I got to still stick with Dak here. Because, look, if the Bills do get the lead, and this is why I kind of like Singletary as well, if the Bills get a 2-score lead or even 10-0, they're going to commit right to that ground game. And Absolutely. That's going to be it. It's going to be all clock control. And you mentioned it, Ben. This is intentional tanking when it comes to the Dolphins. You don't go for the tie in overtime against the Redskins. You go for 2 and then you lose. Are you kidding me? This team wants to lose, and that's why I'm thinking once the Bills are in control, why risk any health issues with their receiving core? Go to that ground game. I'm going Dak here.
I think that's perfectly reasonable. If you want to play it safe, and again with the quarterback position, I understand the need to play safe because all the other positions tend to be much more of a risk. So if you're doing risk assessment and trying to figure out where you want to go, I will not fault you for playing a player against Miami today, especially Josh Allen, especially with his ability to rush, get you the 6 points instead of the 4 points through the air. So I get the safety of playing Josh Allen, but I really do like the matchup for Dak today. So I think the higher upside is going to be rewarded for you in the very end. So good luck to you, Petey. As always, appreciate you checking in. From Sean on YouTube Live, it's a full point PPR. And it's 2 questions, so we'll get to them as quickly as we can. Jacoby Brissett or Kyler Murray is starting at the quarterback spot. We talked about how we really like Brissett. I'm still playing Kyler Murray. I know that the weather in the New York, New Jersey area isn't particularly good. To me, that's almost a benefit because that means Kyler Murray is likely going to scramble, and the Giants haven't been able to stop anybody, let alone the quarterback position this year.
I'll say this too, Larry Fitzgerald in a great spot. Christian Kirk thought we may see him in this matchup, but he's going to be out as well. David Johnson seeing reports that he should play too, so being involved in that passing game as well. So Fitz, David Johnson in a great matchup against the Giants. 50.5. That's the total right now too, Ben.
Second highest total on the board today.
Yeah, it's amazing, and I didn't expect it to be this high, but Vegas knows all, the eye in the sky. So with that, I'm going to stick with Kyler here.
I think Kyler is the absolute right play in this matchup. And again, we talked about how game script could go for both Indianapolis and both for Houston, that both these teams could start to run the ball and really slow down the clock, and I think that could limit some of the scoring and big play opportunity. With Arizona and New York, it's going to be all through the air, and that includes Saquon Barkley, his ability to come back and catch passes. So I think Kyler Murray is the play that I prefer. He also has a toss-up between Austin Eckler and Devin Singletary today. Boy, Austin Eckler, a week removed from a 15-catch game, and then all of a sudden Melvin Gordon comes back, and this Chargers offense, Fensty, has turned into complete and total mush. They're on the road at Tennessee. A lot of people love Tennessee as a sleeper defense this week. I'm of the belief that the Chargers are going to get themselves back on track. There's too much talent on this team for them to continue to look this bad. I love Mike Williams this week with the size advantage he has over Tennessee's corners. I think he could be a guy that could break the slate with a couple of touchdown catches today. But I think if you're looking for upside this week, it's probably through Devin Singletary. I just worry about the timeshare there, but you got to worry about the timeshare with the Chargers too.
Not a fun situation to be in, and that's the problem, especially with how tumultuous the Chargers offense has been. Very hard to know who to trust here. It's almost like when it comes to how I'm attacking Tennessee, I don't want to really touch them through the air. I know you like Mike Williams. I don't like it as much. Okay. So with me, I'm still going to go with Austin Eckler, but this is it. This is it for him. In the future, if we're once again facing these types of situations, Singletary will be that guy. So I think there's just more to give to him But in this, I'm going to still go with Eckler for short passes
Okay,
here.
so we disagree with that on Sean. Either one of his this should be a decent play, especially in. It did say full point PPR,
Right.
but they're incorporating Singletary, and you know what
It's
I
hard,
might
Ben.
have to change my mind. I think Eckler, if it's full point PPR, should be the play here. You're right.
Right.
I didn't realize it was full point PPR.
But this is it. This is it. He's right now. He's in my fantasy doghouse right now. So I mean, thankful for what he did earlier in the season, but this is it for him when, especially in DFS. I mean, DFS, I'm not really even looking at him today. Season long, though, this is Mr. Flex option right here.
Yes.
Could be going to the bench if he does not succeed in this matchup.
From Kansas City Royalty 25 on Periscope says, "Good morning, fellas. Still Red Sunday as always. Are we playing Amari today, or is it too early to call?" So the reports are coming out. Amari Cooper likely to play. He should be in your lineup as long as the indications are that he's likely to go. And even if he's questionable up until game time, it's such a good matchup that I feel like you got to roll with him, especially if all the reports fancy are coming in that he's going to play.
Yep, expected to play. That's what we're seeing right now. I think it's safe to say that he's going to play. And this is not something that just came up today. 2 days ago, we were seeing that he should be able to play. So that gives me a lot more confidence. If I was just seeing this report then in the last hour, that's one thing. But seeing it 2 days ago makes me a little bit more comfortable when it comes to looking at Amari Cooper this week.
Our buddy Corey out in Winnipeg checks in. Running back toss-up between Frank Gore and James White today. So again, the matchup is ideal for Frank Gore. It's so good, but James White continues to get a lot of action in the passing game for New England, and you can throw on the New York Jets. I know that the Cowboys had their issues with them last week, but I prefer James White in this matchup.
I'm going to give you some credit here, Ben. You've sold me on James White a little bit more throughout the show, and that's what this show is. It's two friends talking, and sometimes you figure things out.
Couple of mentions cutting it up.
That's what it's all about, and that's what it is with all of you. We're real. And there are things that I learn as well when Ben and I are conversing for an hour here. And Ben, you've sold me a little bit more on James White, and especially looking at the health issues that New England is all of a sudden facing. I feel better about James White.
And Josh Gordon has been ruled out, correct?
Yes, he has.
Okay, so that's more yeah, so that's, I mean, just all the target share for James White continues to just grow and grow and grow. So yeah, James White could end up with like 13, 14 targets in this game by the time things are all said and done.
Right.
From CJ on YouTube Live, it's a standard league. He needs a running back 2. He has 3 different guys to choose from between Austin Eckler, Devin Singletary, or Jamal Williams. So again, Austin Eckler on the road at Tennessee, Devin Singletary at home against Miami, and Jamal Williams on the road, at home against the Oakland Raiders. So again, not factoring in PPR, I think you got to take Eckler out because he's just not getting any volume in the rushing game anymore. So between Devin Singletary and Jamal Williams, who's really been eating into that workload for Aaron Jones, where do you go with this one?
Man, this is tough as well. I'm going to give Devin Singletary the edge here. Just think that the Bills will have more success and get to that ground game early on versus Miami. I think that's where he's going to come in. Now, after the first quarter, don't freak out if Devin Singletary doesn't have much action in this game. I'm expecting a lot of that action to happen late second and third quarter as well.
Okay, perfectly reasonable. I think Singletary is in the better matchup, and I do think he's going to get some touchdown volume as well. With Jamal Williams, I feel like it's just going to be such a week-to-week thing, and I do think this is going to be a better week, especially being severe favorite. Well, not severe favorites, 5.5, 6-point favorites at home. I think a lot of people are going to be off Aaron Jones today, and I do expect him to get back into the end zone, especially if Green Bay is able to control on the offensive line. The Raiders, that I learned from that matchup against the Bears last week, Fensty, is they are physical on both sides of the ball. But I think Green Bay can match up with that. And I think especially with the way that Aaron Jones runs, he is a better fit in this matchup going up against Green Bay than that of Jamal Williams. So I prefer Devin Singletary. The two of us are in agreement there. From Jeffrey on YouTube Live, it's a half-point PPR. We got to pick one between Stephon Diggs, the hero from last week, Will Fuller, or Allen Robinson. So Diggs, that's a matchup we haven't talked about, really a lot of these matchups today, Fensty. Stephon Diggs is on the road against the Detroit Lions, Will Fuller on the road against the Colts, and Allen Robinson at home against the Saints. It's weird for me to think that Allen Robinson is the play here. I just know that Trubisky targets him a bunch. I know that he's likely going to be shadowed by Marshawn Lattimore, who's been awesome the last few weeks. So to me, I'm probably going between Robinson and Fuller. Just because I think Darius Slay is likely going to be on Diggs, and I don't feel like this is a good Diggs week. So between Fuller and Robinson, at least for me, where are you going on this one?
Man, I'm going to have to go with Fuller again. Again, I love this game so much today, Houston, Indianapolis. And Fuller's getting a ton of deep shots. I'm sitting there with ownership of DeAndre Hopkins and just not seeing Watson go to him deep. That's the problem. He's going for Fuller every time. Fuller had a few drops that I put on him. That could have been
three touchdown drops last week.
And that's all on him. That is nothing on Watson. Those were very, very solid throws going right through his hands, hitting him in the hands. Fuller should have had, at least in the last few weeks, be the biggest monster going. He could have unseated Stephon Diggs if he caught those balls. So with that, I'm going Will Fuller. Here's the thing, by the way, something I've learned from having DFS ownership with Houston and DeAndre Hopkins. Hopkins is better when they just go to him short. Quick 8-yard routes, that's it. That's what he's going to get. Anytime he goes really deeper than 10 yards, he's going to be double covered. What are you seeing from Hopkins? You're seeing late game, fourth quarter production now the last 2 weeks. And what are they? They're not long passes. They're little 10-yard Chad Pennington style passes. That's what you're getting right there when it comes to DeAndre Hopkins. They are hitting Fuller at all costs deep. And also, something that I was talking to Howard Bender about in Fantasy Alarm, Kiki Cutie, he can't escape coverage. Every time you see him at the bottom of the screen, he constantly has two guys on him. Why even target him at this point? So when it comes to that, I'm going Fuller here.
The thing about Kiki Kute, though, last 2 games against the Colts, he's lit him up. Like, completely and totally lit him up. So, for whatever reason, they've looked his way before in the past. I'm probably going to go with Allen Robinson. I think he's a little bit of a safer play, even with Marshawn Lattimore in coverage. I think, again, it's just quick passes from Trubisky, as opposed to the way that Mike Evans played a couple weeks ago, more deep shots. Lattimore has a little bit more opportunity to pick up on that. So I'll say Robinson, but Will Fuller for sure the higher upside play, no doubt about it.
No, absolutely. And the other thing with Diggs is, again, with Slay, thought once again there's a chance he might be out. Nope, you said it, Ben, expected to play as well, so Diggs will have a little bit more trouble. We talked about Kirk Cousins a little bit here and how we're a little timid with the matchup here.
Yeah.
How do you feel about Adam Thielen, though?
In the middle of the slot against the Lions, I don't hate it at all. The target share for Adam Thielen over the course of this season has been tremendous. Like, there has been no game this year where he's had less than 5 targets. And that was still a game that he got into the end zone against the Raiders. Now, he did have 6 targets against the Bears, only caught 2 catches for 6 yards. So he's had some bad games mixed in, but you know that he's going to get volume. You know he's going to play upwards of 90 to 95% of the snaps. He plays way more snaps than Stephon Diggs does. So I know that Adam Thielen's always going to be on the field, so I don't have an issue going to him, and he's got 3 touchdowns in his last 2 games.
Right.
So, and he's also going to be, I'd say maybe between 10 to 15% owned on FSM today. Maybe, probably less if we're going to be completely honest here, because everyone's going to be on Julio, everyone's going to be on Kupp, everyone's going to be on Michael Thomas. People might go back to Keenan Allen, T.Y. Hilton. So I think the ownership for somebody like I think the ownership might not be where it needs to be for Thielen today.
Right. Just something that I'm thinking about, too, with this whole Thielen Diggs thing. You got to be able to cover them both, but how don't you focus on that deep pass after what Diggs did last week? You can. You have to put more focus and coverage on that.
Without question. This one comes from Droppin' Science, and again, we got questions from Paul, from Bennett, from M. Koenig35, and from JP Covers. But let's go to Droppin' Science. Half-point PPR, Carlos Hyde on the road against Indianapolis, Latavius Murray on the road against the Bears, or Jordan Howard on the road against the Cowboys. So from an advantage standpoint, Carlos Hyde has been producing all year, and it's weird because I had no faith in him. He was about to enter the season as the Chiefs' number 3 running back this year. He'd fallen behind Darwin Thompson. Then he gets picked up by Houston, and despite Duke Johnson leading the NFL in yards per carry, Fensty, they keep giving Carlos Hyde a ton of volume in this offense, and you can run on the Colts. Murray, we talked about the volume that he's likely to have today, but Jordan Howard, again, the Cowboys have struggled against the run this year as well. Think about the 4-touchdown game from Aaron Jones. So this is a very tough half-point PPR. So I'll start it with you. I'll let you answer the hard question first, and then I'll respond.
I'm going with Carlos Hyde. again, still feeding him, giving him the volume that he needs, giving especially inside the 10-yard line. I mean, their gifts they're still going with.
Yes.
He's a power runner. And they're going to continue to feed him. Why risk it? And again, just talking about this, Hopkins, teams know how to cover this guy as well. So with inside the 10-yard area right to that goal line, you know he's always going to have two guys on him. What they're going to have to do to get Hopkins in that area is quickly Watson gets it back, throws it immediately to the corner, and hope that Hopkins can make it there. Why do that when you have Carlos Hyde there? So for me, Ben, this is not that hard. I'm going Carlos Hyde here.
Yeah, I not doing Jordan Howard because I'd like to see him get a little bit more involved in the pass game. Although you can run on Dallas. I'm going to go Latavius Murray because I do think that even though he hasn't gotten a ton of volume in the passing game, I don't think they feel uncomfortable dropping the ball off to him, especially Teddy Bridgewater has been known to do that with his running backs in the short part of the field. So I think from a volume standpoint, no one's going to see more volume today than Latavius Murray, and that's why I prefer him in a half-point PPR.
I don't hate that because, again, it's the safe floor play.
Yeah.
But with me thinking on how high scoring this Houston game is going to be, you can also, like you said, run on the Colts as well. That's why I'm sticking with Hyde. But, Ben, look, you're obvious. This is a safe floor play today, and that's what you're looking at when it comes to the Saints. So with that, I'm still going Hyde. I'm sticking by it, but Murray also not a bad option in this one as well.
Carlos Hyde the last 2 weeks has had a total of 47 carries for 176 yards and 2 touchdowns. So you're right. Like, he's been terrific and getting more involved as far as is just pounding and grounding it. And he's looked terrific. So I think that's a perfectly reasonable play. I think both of them are fine. I slightly prefer Murray. You slightly prefer Carlos Hyde.
Yep.
Let's go to Paul on YouTube Live. He's got 2 quick questions for us. Jamal Williams or Sony Michel? And then do I pick up Daniel Jones instead of Jacoby Brissett? So let's start with the running back toss-up. I prefer Sony Michel this week to Jamal Williams. I do think Oakland's front 7 has actually been playing pretty well this year, and I feel like Michel is going to get more opportunity for red zone volume as opposed to Jamal Williams. So I slightly prefer Michel. What about you?
No, I do as well, even though it makes me very, very nauseous because of the type of season that Sony Michel has had. But, I mean, the Jets giving up, they're middle of the road when it comes to how many rushing yards they give up. Not expecting Sony Michel to be any kind of active in the passing game, especially even with all these injuries that New England's facing right now. So I could see Sony Michel scoring from that 7-yard line. They'll give it right to him. Find the hole. Jets are not that threatening. And with that, I'm sticking with Michel. It's not a fun situation in Green Bay right now. And I need to play it safe whenever it's a decision between one of the Green Bay running backs, especially Jamal Williams. Aaron Jones, if this were Aaron Jones, shoo-in, it's fine. With Jamal Williams, I can't put that full trust in him just yet.
All right, his other question, would you pick up Daniel Jones for the week and play him or over Jacoby Brissett? This week I would. Yeah, the matchup is much better to me going up against Arizona at home than Jacoby Brissett, but I know that you're higher on Brissett today than I am.
I'm a little bit higher on Brissett, but you know what? Again, the one thing that I'm also thinking about with Brissett as well, and I'm debating it in my mind, is because he has some receiver injuries as well. The tight ends not really doing him much justice there too. I'm fine with picking up Daniel Jones. Again, it's a great matchup with a very high total that I want to take advantage of. I'm fine with that, Ben.
Yeah, and again, there is some rain in New York today from Kevin Roth, the great, outstanding meteorologist over at Roto Grinders. He writes that there's going to be rain likely for the majority of the game, but not necessarily heavy rain. Could increase a little bit in the second half, and the winds are light. So again, you don't really have to worry about the rain if there's not a lot of wind. So I'm not necessarily fading that spot. And again, maybe if you're playing daily and you see that there's going to be an impact of rain, you could get some of these guys with lower ownership and really have some leverage here. Let's go back to Periscope from Bennett. He wants to know Tevin Coleman or James White in PPR. A lot of James White questions this week, Fensty. And then Tevin Coleman's got a nice matchup on the road at Washington. I'm still going James White. Again, I just feel like the volume in the passing game is going to be there for him in a PPR setting. If it were half-point PPR or standard leagues, because of the red zone usage that Tevin Coleman has been getting, he's been getting a ton of volume in the red zone. They just prefer to run him there as opposed to Matt Breida. I probably prefer Coleman, but if it's full-point PPR, let's roll with James White.
Yes, I agree with you, but I'll say this, Ben, and this makes me laugh. Revenge game narrative, Kyle Shanahan. So with that, and looking at how the ground game could be utilized today. The problem is I would lock Coleman in instantly. But Matt Breida, while he's healthy at the moment, still scares me away a little bit.
You mentioned the revenge game. For players, I feel like it's different. For coaches,
okay, you know what, and that's perfectly fair, and I'm glad that you said that. I was actually just going to ask you about that.
Okay,
if there's a difference.
So here's my perspective on this game, right? And again, I could be complete. This one I might get more wrong than any game that I get wrong today. Like I think San Francisco wins, and maybe they still cover. I took Washington, I think at +10, but man, the game last week was the game they had circled on the calendar. That was to go to LA, beat the hell out of the Rams in their own building, and then you got to travel from West Coast to East Coast, second straight game on the road. And it just feels like a letdown spot to me, especially early on in the game with bad weather, with Washington liking to control time of possession. So to me, it just feels like the 49ers, I could just see them getting off to a slow start. Garoppolo maybe turning over the ball a little bit early on in the first half. So I don't necessarily love this matchup for them, even though Washington has been terrible. But again, that's just the narrative that I'm playing in my head about this game. It just feels like a letdown spot.
Very slow game that I'm expecting, and this is one that just doesn't excite me one bit. I'm fine, especially again with the injuries for New England there with their receiving core. I'm fine with James White. I don't view James White as a running back. I view him as that extra receiver. So it's Sony Michel's still there. They have different roles.
Yes.
And that's how the Patriots are going to have to take apart the Jets. Short passing routes right there, and that's where
Exactly.
James White is perfect for it. And especially Edelman doesn't play. I mean, it's going to be all him.
All him. Yeah, like there's like we talked about, like 14, 15 targets could be without question in play for this week. So I'm not necessarily shying away from James White at all. Finally, a couple more coming in. This one is from M. Canning35 on Periscope. Non-PPR, do I go with Marlon Mack, Tyler Lockett, or Keenan Allen in a non-point PPR? Man, you would have thought a couple weeks ago that anybody considering not playing Keenan Allen would have been nuts. And the last 3 weeks, it's just been abysmal for him.
And it's my fault, Ben. It's
your fault? You killed Keenan Allen?
Fault. Let me tell you why. Because we do this Fantasy Alarm pie bet every week, which, Ben, you can still get in on, by the way, if you're willing to step up to the plate and take a pie to the face if you lose. So hashtag that FF pie bet right there.
I'll get in on it. You have to tell me how it works. I'll do it.
How the FF Pie Bet works is here's what you do. You tweet at Fantasy Alarm, at RotoBuzzGuy. That's Howard Bender. You can put me in as well at Fensty Sports. We each, me, Howard, Jim Bowden, our friend, former GM.
Oh,
and also,
Bowden.
That's right, Ani Sridhar. We each picked a receiver. For me, that was T.Y. Hilton. We have a draft order and everything. Howard took Cooper Kupp, #1 overall. Michael Thomas got taken by Jim Bowden. Ani Sridhar has Julian Edelman, and you can't replace the player once you pick him. So he's sweating that out now until Monday night with Julian Edelman questionable, and I had the 4th pick with T.Y. Hilton. So what you do, Ben, if you want to get in on this, those 4 receivers are off the table. You can pick anybody else. The rest of the field is yours. If your receiver in a full-point PPR beats one of our receivers, you're safe. However, if that receiver loses to all 4 of us, you must tweet a video of you taking a pie to the face.
Has to be a receiver. It's all about just whoever has the highest score.
That's right, and it's full-point PPR. And again, so the lowest score, if you lose to all 4 of us, you're taking the pie to the face. Now, if Julian Edelman, we find out later today, he's not playing, Ani Sridhar has lost. And anyone that enters, essentially, at this point, can defeat Ani, and that makes you avoid the pie. However, if he plays, you enter it, Ben, and you have to, again, enter on Twitter, then you're taking the pie to the face if you lose.
Give me the names of the wide receivers that have already been taken. So you mentioned T.Y. Hilton.
Yep, that's my guy, T.Y. Hilton. And then there's
I got to find one pen that works here. So T.Y. Hilton, Michael Thomas.
Edelman.
Oh, Edelman,
Yep,
okay.
Thomas. Yep, and Cooper Kupp.
Michael Thomas and Cooper Kupp. So I have my chance. I have my shot at any other wide receiver on the board.
Except for those 4.
Except for those. Oh. All right.
Then you can take a week to think about it if you're not ready to step up to the plate. But
Then this
You know
feels
what,
like a
Ben?
direct challenge on our show that I feel like if I don't choose somebody right now,
I don't bully, Ben. It's your decision.
um, give me.
You don't have to answer right now, Ben. You still have until 1 p.m. Eastern to decide if you're entering.
So okay,
So
and I don't have to say it. Do I have to sue a video or do I just tweet you the picks?
tweet the picks, hashtag FFPieBet.
Okay.
And that's the big thing. And make sure you put Fantasy Alarm at RotoBuzz Guy on it, and you'll be in it to win it. But Ben, if you want to take another week to be a spectator and think about it, you also have that option too, as do all of you out there.
Okay, I'll tell you what. Next week on the show, I will full on participate.
Wow,
In the
love
bet,
it.
yeah, I will go on. And by the way, I probably would have chosen. I probably would have chosen Julio this week, just
Okay.
because that would have been my exposure to Julio. Even though I'm not playing in a lot of daily lineups, I'll go with my exposure to Julio because I like him to score more points than Edelman this week. Final few questions. Okay, so we talked about non-PPR. Do we decide between Marlon Mack, Tyler Lockett, or Keenan Allen? I'm going with Marlon Mack in this one, non-PPR.
Safe play. We're going Marlon Mack. Lock
Okay,
that
and
in.
last one from JP Covers over on YouTube. Robert Woods, Kenny Galladay, or Larry Fitzgerald? We need to pick two of them, so one got to go. Fitzgerald's going to be the safer pick. Galladay's got a tough matchup against Minnesota, but Xavier Rhodes didn't have a great game last week either. And then Robert Woods has a chance to either do nothing or completely go berserk today. So that's probably the higher upside pick of all three of those guys in the matchup against Atlanta, especially with the best matchup on the board. So if you're removing one of those guys, Fensty, Robert Woods, Kenny Galladay, or Larry Fitzgerald, which one are you taking out of the lineup?
Man, I'm going to go Kenny Galladay. I don't feel great about it, but again, I like Robert Woods to score today, and Larry Fitzgerald with Kirk out, a lot safer of an option in a high game total. So Kenny Galladay's got to go, for me at least.
Okay, I will take out Robert Woods.
Okay.
And that way you have the safer bets with Galladay and both Fitzgerald. But you can swap out Woods for Galladay if you want to go with a little bit more high risk, high exposure JP. So best of luck to you. All right, before we go, Fancy, let's go through some of our favorite plays over at Fantasy Sports Markets today, starting at the quarterback spot. We know everybody is likely going to be on Matt Ryan. We know a ton of people are going to be on Jared Goff this week. Russell Wilson and Lamar Jackson, I would imagine, are also going to be fairly popular. But are you looking at Deshaun Watson this week? Are you going to throw in a lineup with Jacoby Brissett? Who else are you looking at the quarterback spot?
I mean, I am looking at Brissett. I am always looking at Watson as well. So Watson will likely be in that super flex spot along with Jared Goff.
Okay, I'm with you there. I also think Kyler Murray has a chance to have a fantastic game, and I actually could see him having low ownership on FSM this week because of all the outstanding quarterback plays. So again, if you're playing on the Superflex, it's such a good opportunity to go ahead and throw in Kyler Murray, but I think you can leverage the field a little bit if you play him today, especially with some bad weather. He's going to run a lot today for Arizona. At running back, Leonard Fournette, cash game lock. Do not think about it. Just go ahead and plug him in. But, if you're playing some of the tournaments or you're trying to get some other leverage, Saquon Barkley comes back today. Dalvin Cook is considered to be matchup proof. But who else do you like as far as potential slate games today?
What about Josh Jacobs? And do we put that faith back into Mark Ingram? That's a big question that I have, Ben.
Yeah, and again, if you think that Tennessee is going to be able to control the Chargers in time of possession, this is a really nice spot for Derrick Henry this week too.
Right.
Also, by the way, don't forget about David Johnson going up against the Giants as well. You can do a really intriguing stack with both him and Kyler Murray.
Yep.
And Ezekiel Elliott is also in play. Remember, the Sunday night game counts on the Sunday slate over at Fantasy Sports Markets. Wide receiver, there's a lot of different ways you can go. Certainly Cooper Kupp probably will be the most popular option. A lot of people are still going to go to Michael Thomas even in a matchup against Chicago because the volume and the target share has been there. You can also go with Julio or DeAndre Hopkins or Calvin Ridley and Will Fuller. Dare you even go back to Keenan Allen this week, Fancy? And who are some other plays that you like? Also, let's not forget about T.Y. Hilton.
He's my pie bet player, Ben, so I have a lot riding on him, and there's a reason for that. Target monster that he is, I'm going to go and ride with him, especially on FSM. Another guy you can go with as well. I mean, we mentioned Thielen before as well, but don't forget about Brandon Cooks. There's another receiver when it comes to those LA Rams, so Brandon Cooks, big playability there, and DJ Chark as well. Man,
DJ, my dude.
Matchup.
I love DJ Chark today. I think if you really want to get creative with one of your lineups, do a little Minshew, Fournette, DJ Chark, run it back with Joe Mixon on the other side. It's a game that's going to have some scoring today that not a lot of people are going to be on. Also, love Brandon Cooks this week, and I think that's a great play for some leverage if you're going to pair up with Jared Goff and don't want to use Cooper Kupp since everyone's going to be playing him in cash. Last but not least, at the tight end spot, you always play tight ends against Arizona. Evan Ingram is a fantastic play today, but certainly George Kittle on the road at Washington, Zach Ertz against Dallas. Austin Hooper continues to put up number one tight end numbers for Atlanta. And then Darren Waller, Mark Andrews, Hunter Henry, all those guys are great plays today on FSM.
Absolutely. Now, I would have said it as well, Jimmy Graham, but now with the Packers, we didn't even talk about the Packers' health, that Geronimo Allison and Marquez Valdes-Scantling can both end up playing in this matchup. They haven't been ruled out just yet, Ben. Now that puts me off to Jimmy Graham to try and be a little bit different. Mark Andrews, I'm looking at him dead in the eye, along with Evan Ingram. Might even start both of them in an FSM lineup.
So again, keep your eye on those injury news for the Green Bay Packers. They just came out, Fensty. They are both active today. Geronimo Allison, Marquez Valdes-Scantling. Take out Alan Lazard out of your lineups, unfortunately.
But then he said he'll outwork anyone. Alan Lazard said that on SiriusXM. You never hear anyone say that. I'll outwork anyone. Wow.
Yeah. So if you're going back to him, this is probably not the week to do so. But maybe in due time, he'll be back. Fensty, where can the people hear you? Where can they find your outstanding coverage on the NFL and also the NBA?
SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio, Wake Up Fantasy Sports, every single Saturday, 6 to 8 a.m. Eastern, on throughout the week as well. You can hear me with the Fantasy Alarm crew as well. FantasyAlarm.com. Again, big weekend for fantasy basketball drafts. Get the cheat sheet at FantasyAlarm.com. And also, make sure you get ready. DFS coverage is going to be hot, especially on FSM. And I want to sink my teeth right into this NBA season and dominate it early.
So there you go. He's Fensty. Make sure you guys are following him on Twitter at Fensty Sports. Follow me at Benny Heiss and, of course, at FSM Contest. You still got about an hour and a half to get those lineups in. There's a Beat Benny Heiss. There's a contest for $5 with a $50,000 roster bonus. Over $220,000 is up for grabs today. So go get that money at FantasySportsMarkets.com. A new edition of the Fantasy Sports Markets podcast is coming out on Monday. I had an opportunity to interview former NBA referee Tim Donaghy. That name sounds familiar. It's because people he knew were betting on games, and they were making a lot of money in the process. He's got some amazing stories, including the time where he was going to fight Rasheed Wallace in the parking lot. It's an amazing... It's an amazing story. Yes, Tim Donaghy and Rasheed Wallace met in the parking lot, ready to fight. You'll have to hear that story on the Fantasy Sports Markets podcast coming out later this week. For Fensty, I'm Ben. We'll talk to you guys soon. Be good.